Happy 420, everybody. Happy April the 20th. And I thought I would do a special video today because it is the 20th anniversary of this album behind me, which is Boards of Canada, Music has the Right to Children. And so what made me really go into this album again, that Pitchfork had an article titled Why Music Has the Right to Children is the Greatest Psychedelic Album of the 90s. I think that claim is a little far-fetched, as I think Boards of Canada's best album is Gio Gotti. But this album, Music Has the Right to Children, has a very interesting background in itself. For starters, the article explains that there was a lot of bands like Future Sounds of London, Square Pusher, Aphex Twin. They were making kind of weird, artsy-fartsy electronic music for the future, IDM, intelligent dance music, where electronic music, you don't dance to it, you just listen to it and appreciate the electronics for what it is. And a lot of that is very sweple, and you're making futuristic techno music. And accordingly to the argument, Pitchfork said that Boards of Canada, yes, they were making trip hop like, DJ Shadow or Nightmares on Wax. Supposedly the argument was that Music Has the Right to Children was taking samples of the past, in particular 1950s and 60s or 70s aesthetics, and then putting it with hip-hop MPC beats and just referring to the back. And supposedly, one of the big things that Pitchfork argues is that it's a quote, it touches the collective consciousness of everyone from that previous generation who listened to this record, and then they had feels or nostalgia about this 1960s, 70s past. Kind of what Brandon Adamson talks on the alt-left. He plays with all these, things that he likes from that generation. One trait about Boards of Canada is they're scary as hell. I mean, ever since Beware the Friendly Stranger, on Gio Gotti, that's a scary-ass album. Supposedly a lot of subliminal messages, and I could have an album with that, but we're talking about this album, Music Has the Right to Children. I discovered Boards of Canada through Webble and Bob, not Salad Fingers, and I remember their old Music Has a Right to tracks were on there, but I really liked Gio Gotti. I remember the third album came out in 2005, and I had a Windows XP or a Windows 2000 computer, and I saw the promo for the third album. I thought it was interesting. I listened to it, and I hated it. I hate Dave and Cowboy. Don't like the indie rock shit that does it. And then I made a video about Tomorrow's Harvest. I remember that coming out in 2013, but that sweet spot, I think, is Gio Gotti. They're a very one-dimensional band. They can only do one thing good. But this album, Music Has the Right, it's their demo tapes, more polished, more for the whole, Ninja Tuna, Warped Records, kind of hip-hop beat, Listening to this album, I have a really good setup. I have a really good, almost $1,000 setup just to listen to vinyl records and to really hear what's everything going on. I'm obsessed with the whole audiophile stuff. And, buying this album on vinyl again, or I never had it on CD. I bought it on vinyl for the first time. And my opinion on it is, according to the record, the presentation I've gotten is, seems like the first record is very scary up until Roy G. Biv. It's very scary stuff on the first record, side A and side B. Roy G. Biv kind of closes it. On the second record disc, it's all just extra beats like Rue the World and Aquarius, Orange, that stuff, and Olsen, which I have to give a shout out. Martin Shrimp told me that if I listen to Olsen over and over again, I can develop chakras in my system and I can improve on my social life if I listen to Olsen 24/7. I'm not sure if that's right, but Pete Standing Alone is actually quite scary if you think about it. Made me think of the Ian Brady or the Murders of that. I don't know what I was thinking, but I think Pete Standing Alone is pretty scary. But the album, one of my favorite tracks in the entire album is Open the Light, the very previous last track. And I felt Open the Light, if it's really, really sunny outside, your vision gets grainy like a a Super Film or a Super 88, and Open the Light. I just thought that was a really good like synth pop song. It's like it doesn't even, it sounds like it's out there. I tend to listen to this music in the dark in my room, and the lights are all out, and it's like 1 a.m. I'm putting on the record, it's all dark. I feel like there's a monster in my room, and all I hear is "I love you," and like the whole Eagle in Your Mind. Eagle in Your Mind has to be, yeah, the best track on the album. I mean, it's scary. It's the typical like music is math. It's very dense. It's made me sweat. I love The Color of Fire. I think The Color of Fire reminds me of like a John Kricfaluski film when Boo Boo runs into the wild and he turns into a bear and goes "Bleh, bleh," kind of like that. It's like a John K. Ren and Stimpy joke. I don't know. The Color of Fire with that whole "I love you" skit over and over reminds me of that. And the track afterwards is like the classic, trip hop stuff, and just but some of those synth lines are really scary. And if you listen to The Dark, you feel the sound. You feel the sound. I love 6010. 6010 is another like scary graveyard shift beat. I love the track after the hexagon with the people in the background. That's kind of like, I've heard that on like Music Choice Sounds of the Seasons or Groove Salad, which was like an old ambient radio station if you had like FM. I used to listen to that stuff when I was 13. That's what I miss about old school trip hop. This is definitely like a good old school trip hop album. Now, to get to the bottom of this, I'm not going to go track by track, but what I'd like to say is that this album, Music by Boards of Canada, pretty much is. It's just a trip hop release. It's nothing that special. The Pitchfork article and the Boards of Canada bitch fans make it as if it's some legend. Now, I hear arguments online. They say, well, Boards of Canada invented Vaporwave. I'm like, that's not true. I mean, they have their own aesthetic, their own power, their own, to simply reduce it down to this bullshit. It's Vaporwave. Like, I had this faggot guest on the Stark Truth named Spear, and I had a fucking facepalm with Robert Stark. I'm like, Robert, why the hell did you add this bitch, like fucking 17-year-old kid in college talking to me what the fuck Vaporwave is? And I can't stand an interview. I don't like that kid Spear. I think he's a little bitch kid telling me everything's Vaporwave. Like, dude, you don't know anything. And so, like, Boards of Canada, I believe, there's a lot of liberals who are a lot of post-baby boomers or baby boomer liberals who are in our elite class, had traumatic experiences growing up. They had terrible working class dads and stupid stay-at-home moms. When they got into power, they all collectively want to talk about trauma. And I think the biggest theme of Boards of Canada's work, and a secret theme behind Music Has the Right, is child abuse or a child trauma. I think this album is about traumas as a kid. And that's the secret fear behind the album. Yeah, I get it. The album is just a normal trip out, chill out. I'm making some beats, have a backwards hip hop, play on the MPC, into that, because it was cool to like that shit in like 98. But that's kind of a long gone era. 20 years now, kids don't even know what that is. Millennials or even Z doesn't give a shit about the past. And it's sad nobody's writing this down. I do remember it when I was like 13, but I didn't have I wasn't smart enough to write it down, but I think the secret theme behind Music is child abuse or child trauma. That the scary family behind me is a bad memory of a kid living through the 70s and a terrible time of grainy video and old medium. And then now you're in this weird futuristic iPod future, and you look back and it's kind of like Green Anarchy or some trauma that has sticked with you. And that's another thing. Boards of Canada plays on that fear of child abuse and child trauma. And the tracks illustrate that a lot. Though there is no narrative of the album, it's just an album and a collection of songs. It is very interesting. The album was originally made for disc. The LP is just for flashy reasons only. But to reiterate and to respond back to the Pitchfork article about how it's the greatest psychedelic album of the 1990s, well, not much people listened to it. It was only for like hip-hop heads and like electronic beat people. And most white people are into Neutral Hill Hotel and other bullshit, white people will only grasp onto anything which is like culturally white approved. And yeah, I've seen the Fox News reporter talk about Boards of Canada, and yeah, Bach has become very sweple, and whites will discriminate and choose what they want to listen to based upon how white it is. I always thought there was this anti-whiteness behind Boards of Canada, especially with the child abuse thing, but oh well, what are you gonna do? But I make this video to celebrate the album. If you're watching this right now, do yourself a favor, go listen to Boards of Canada here on April 20th, 2018. It is a great album, and it's definitely for the fan of any audiophile stuff. I can have long discussions about the meanings behind the tracks. Very interesting stuff from the Scottish duo. Go listen to this album right away.